I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There he was standing in the center of the conference room, smiling confidently as our manager praised his brilliant ideas. Ideas I had spent nights perfecting. Ideas I had walked him through, step by step, while he sipped coffee and nodded like he understood. And now he was reaping the rewards. A raise, recognition, applause, and I stood there, stunned, invisible in the very meeting I helped build. I had thought I was doing the right thing lifting up someone who was struggling, giving him the support I wish someone had given me. But in that moment, something shifted. Still, what happened after that moment, that's what I never saw coming. It wasn't revenge, and it wasn't karma. It was something far more complicated, and it changed how I see trust and people forever. I've always believed in helping others, especially at work. I started at Lucent Analytics 4 years ago, fresh out of grad school, armed with nothing but ambition and caffeine. It wasn't easy earning my place in a fast-paced data firm where everyone was constantly fighting for credit, but I worked hard, kept my head down, and climbed steadily. I became known for my attention to detail and for being the one who could explain complicated reports in plain English, something our executives appreciated more than they admitted. Then came Sean. He joined our team as a transfer from another department. Friendly, easygoing, charming, even. But it didn't take long to realize he was, well, casual about his work, missed deadlines, sent half-finished reports, showed up late. At first, I figured he just needed time to adjust. We all have rough starts, right? So, I offered to help him get up to speed. I stayed after hours to explain procedures, rewrote slides so he wouldn't look bad during meetings, and even let him piggyback on one of my presentation ideas when he was scrambling the night before a pitch. He thanked me. Of course, always with a grin and a "you're the best." Seriously, I thought I was being a good teammate. Little did I know, I wasn't just helping him. I was building a stage for his success and digging the hole I'd soon fall into. At first, helping Sean felt like the right thing to do. He always seemed overwhelmed, and I could see glimpses of potential in his work buried under poor formatting and missed context. Sure, but it was there. I wanted to believe that, with the right guidance, he'd grow into his role and become an asset to our team. So, I stepped in again and again. When he couldn't finish the monthly performance analysis, I did it for him and let him present it, justifying it to myself as a team win. When he didn't understand how to model projections, I let him use my spreadsheet templates, which I had fine-tuned over years. When our boss asked about a particularly well-written client summary, Sean jumped in with a confident, "Yeah, I pulled that together," and I stayed silent. Because what's credit compared to being kind? I covered for him when he missed a major deadline, telling our team lead he had been helping me with a side project so he wouldn't look bad. I even encouraged him to speak up more during team meetings, filling in the gaps when he fumbled, always making sure he looked competent. I told myself that I wasn't doing this for recognition. I believed in lifting others up, in creating a better team environment. And truthfully, I like being needed. It felt good to be someone others relied on. Sean leaned into it, too. He started coming to me for everything scripts for client calls, data breakdowns, slide decks. "You're amazing," he'd say with that signature smile. "I don't know what I'd do without you." What I didn't realize then was that he wasn't trying to grow, he was getting comfortable. Comfortable with me doing the hard work. Comfortable with me staying behind the curtain while he stood in the spotlight. I thought we were building trust. I thought I was investing in a teammate, but I was wrong. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Our manager gathered us in the conference room, all smiles, and started talking about recognizing hidden talent and rewarding those who go above and beyond. My heart was racing. I had been working late nights for weeks, juggling my own responsibilities and Sean's. Maybe, just maybe, someone had finally noticed. Then he said Sean's name. There was applause. Sean stood up, beaming, and thanked everyone for believing in him. "I've been working really hard to improve," he said, with zero irony, "and I owe a lot of that to my own initiative." I sat there frozen, blinking at the words. Initiative. He hadn't written a report in full without my help in months. I felt a strange detachment, like I was watching a scene from a movie where I wasn't the lead. I was the stand-in who got cut. After the meeting, Sean clapped me on the back and joked, "Guess all that teamwork paid off." That moment hit harder than anything. It wasn't just that he got the raise, I could have lived with that. It was the way he dismissed my role like it never existed. The ease with which he wore a mask of humility while quietly erasing me from the story. That evening, I sat at my desk long after most had left, staring at my screen but seeing nothing. Questions circled in my mind. Had I been too generous, too naive? Had I confused kindness with weakness? And the worst question of all, had I let someone walk all over me because I didn't want to seem selfish? Trust once so freely given now felt fragile and foolish. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't sure who I was at work anymore, and I definitely wasn't sure who Sean really was. A week passed. I kept my head down, avoided Sean as much as possible, and tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. Maybe he really didn't see what he did as betrayal. Maybe I was just too sensitive. But deep down, something felt off. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, while cleaning up the shared drive for our department, I stumbled across a folder I hadn't noticed before. It was oddly labeled with just an underscore and a date. Out of curiosity and maybe a little spite, I clicked it open. What I found made my stomach drop. Inside were several documents, drafts of reports, project outlines, and client memos. Almost all of them were mine. But the file names had been changed. And in the document properties, the author field listed Sean's name. I opened one after another in disbelief. He had copied my work, made minor edits, and submitted them as his own. And based on the timestamps, this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. He'd been systematically lifting my work for months, some even going back to when I was first helping him get up to speed. I felt sick. But the worst came last an email draft, apparently saved by mistake. It was from Sean, addressed to a hiring manager at another company, pitching himself for a leadership role. In it, he claimed sole responsibility for a major project I had led and even attached my presentation, with his name swapped in. I sat there in stunned silence. This wasn't laziness, this was manipulation, a calculated effort to climb, even if it meant stepping on the very person who had held the ladder steady for him. For a moment, I felt like a fool. All that support, the long hours covering for him, the trust I'd given it freely, and he'd turned it into a weapon. But then something shifted inside me. Shame turned into resolve. I wasn't going to let this slide. Not this time. He didn't just take credit, he tried to rewrite the story completely. But I still had the original script, and now I was ready to speak. The next morning, I walked into the office with a folder in hand and a storm brewing in my chest. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear, calm, focused. I had all the documents printed out, with timestamps, metadata, and a copy of the email Sean had accidentally saved. I didn't go to him directly. I went to HR. They listened, closely. Their faces shifted from neutral to shocked as I laid everything out. I wasn't here to start drama, I made that clear. But I couldn't allow someone to sabotage my integrity and take credit for my work. Not after everything. Within an hour, Sean was called into a private meeting. He came out pale. He didn't even look in my direction. Later that day, our manager asked to speak with me. She told me she had no idea what had been going on, that Sean had positioned himself as the backbone of the team, thanks to my mentorship. The truth unraveled quickly. Sean was placed under investigation for misconduct. The raise he got, frozen. The job offer he'd boasted about in the email, withdrawn. HR told me confidentially that the company he was trying to jump to had received an anonymous tip with receipts. As for me, I wasn't fired. I wasn't punished. In fact, my manager apologized for overlooking my contributions, for trusting the wrong person, and for not seeing the signs sooner, and for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my voice, about setting a boundary, and about learning that sometimes helping someone isn't kindness, it's enabling, especially when they show you who they really are. The aftermath of everything that had happened was a blend of disbelief and a strange sense of vindication. I stayed at the company, though everything felt different. The dynamics in the office shifted subtly after the truth about Sean came to light. Some people were shocked, others weren't as surprised. In some ways, I think they all knew what had been going on. But no one had the courage to say anything until it was too late. As for Sean, he disappeared from the office shortly after the investigation. His departure was swift, no goodbye, no acknowledgement. It was as though he had never been part of the team at all. It wasn't even satisfying seeing him go. In fact, it felt a little sad. He had wasted so much potential by relying on others instead of putting in the work. But maybe that's the most painful part of his exit. It wasn't that he was caught, it was that he could have been so much more if he had just taken responsibility for his own growth. For me, though, things were different. The immediate aftermath wasn't as triumphant as I thought it would be. I didn't feel like a victor in the traditional sense. The truth was, I wasn't just fighting for recognition. I had been fighting for my own dignity, my own self-respect, which had been chipped away little by little with each unacknowledged contribution. Every extra hour worked without so much as a thank you. But when the dust settled, I realized something important: I had given too much of myself away in the process. I had become so focused on helping Sean rise that I had forgotten to take care of my own career. I learned a lot from this experience, lessons that are hard to admit, but valuable nonetheless. The first was about boundaries. I realized that kindness doesn't always equate to success for the person you're trying to help. Sometimes, helping someone too much enables them to take advantage of your efforts. I thought that by pushing Sean, I was doing the right thing. But in reality, I had neglected my own aspirations, thinking I was being selfless. And while selflessness is admirable, there's a balance that I had missed. The second lesson was about trust. Trust is a fragile thing. You can't just give it away freely, even to colleagues you think you know. Sean had played on that trust, using my belief in him to climb the ladder while throwing me under the bus. But that was also a reflection of my own judgment. I had trusted him too quickly. I had believed the best in him, not realizing that his intentions were clouded with ambition at any cost. That kind of trust, when misplaced, can hurt you in ways you never expect. Lastly, I realized the importance of speaking up for myself. Throughout the entire ordeal, I had hesitated to speak up. I didn't want to cause drama. I didn't want to rock the boat. But I had learned that in doing so, I allowed the situation to grow toxic, to affect my confidence, my work, and my happiness. Speaking up wasn't just about being right. It was about taking control of my own narrative. It was about making sure that my contributions were recognized, that I had a voice in my career, and that I wasn't going to be steamrolled by someone who didn't appreciate the effort it took to get where I was. And so, while the betrayal had hurt, the lessons I gained from it were far more significant. I didn't need to prove myself to anyone except me. I didn't need to sacrifice my own ambitions for someone else's. And, perhaps most importantly, I didn't need to rely on anyone else's validation to define my worth. In the months that followed, I found myself refocused, more driven, and more determined than ever. I took on new projects with confidence, no longer afraid to stand up for myself and my ideas. I set boundaries with colleagues, made sure I was compensated fairly for my work, and most importantly, I stayed true to my own goals and ambitions. Eventually, I got the promotion that I had deserved all along, not because I fought for it in the way that most people expect, but because I earned it with hard work, integrity, and a firm belief in my own value. I didn't need to make anyone else look bad for my success. I didn't need to tear anyone down. All I needed was to stay true to my path and trust that my efforts would be seen. And as for Sean, wherever he ended up, I hoped he learned a valuable lesson about the difference between stealing credit and earning respect. I'm sure he'll carry that lesson with him, even if it takes a long time to sink in. But I wasn't thinking about him anymore. I had my own journey to focus on.